Okay, good morning everybody.
Dobré ráno.
We would like to continue our study.
Chceli by sme pokračovať v našom štúdiu. Excuse me.
We studied Daniel 11 last time. We did the repetition of Daniel 11. We looked at
Študovali sme, ako sa opakuje Daniel 11.
that we can find a parallel verses in chapter 11 of Daniel.
A že vlastne v 11. kapitole vidíme také verše paralelné.
That the verses 5 till 16.
Verše 5 až 16.
And you can even go, I did not even go further, but you can even use verses, I think 17 to 22.
Ja som už ďalej nešiel, ale potom sú ešte verše 17 až 22.
Where the king of the south enters into Egypt.
Kedy vlastne kráľ juhu vstupuje do Egypta.
The history with Cleopatra.
Tam je to Kleopatre.
Is also a parallel history with this history, where we can see the king of the north entering into Egypt.
Tiež sú to paralelné dejiny s týmito.
Which is the verses 43 to 45.
Sorry, before you say king of the south going into Egypt and now king of the north.
Oh, sorry, king of the king of the north.
Pardon, nie kráľ juhu, ale kráľ severa vstupuje do Egypta.
Yeah. So even the verses 42 till 45 line up with this history, which I didn't zoom in.
Čiže ešte aj verše 42 a 45 sú vlastne v línii s tými ďalšími veršami, ale na to som sa teraz nezameriaval.
Because my purpose was to show this the two battles that lacked in this line.
Mojím zámerom bolo zamerať sa na tie dve bitky, ktoré tam chýbali v tej línii.
The Raphia and Panium battles.
A bitky pri Rafia a Panium.
You can do a whole week on just Raphia and Panium and the details that come out of there and the light that shines out of these two.
Celý týždeň by sa dalo vlastne študovať len o tých dvoch bitkách, koľko svetla z toho vyšlo, čo to vlastne znamená, čo tam je okolo toho.
Maybe it's a week a little much, but there's a lot. There's really a lot.
Možno nie celý týždeň, ale je tam toho naozaj dosť.
Which I'm not gonna do. One thing I skipped over in the last presentation.
Jednu vec, čo som predtým preskočil.
Or something I did not really mention purposely.
Nespomenul som to schválne.
Was the fact whether the king of the south dies here or comes to his end here or not in 1989.
Bol ten fakt, že či vlastne ten kráľ juhu tu zomrie a príde ku svojmu koncu alebo nie.
We used to teach.
My sme zvykli učiť.
Before Raphia and Panium were there, so this is empty.
Predtým, ako sme poznali tú Rafiu a Panium.
And we say the king of the south comes here to its end. It says in the verse, the king of the north flows over.
Tam, jak sa píše v tom 40. verši, že ten král severa zaplaví a prejde, tak sme zvykli učiť.
And passes through, which means that he takes the whole country.
Sme hovorili, že vezme celú krajinu.
And he even continues to go further.
A
the passing through is just he passes by.
A ešte ide ďalej.
So the king of the south comes to his end, or you could say dies if you like, but it's finished.
Učili sme, že ten kráľ juhu ako keby zomrie, alebo je s ním koniec.
At least that's what the verse says, and that's what we thought to be in 1989.
Tak sme tomu rozumeli z toho verša, aj sme si mysleli, že to sa stalo v 89.
Now these two verses come into the picture, or these two waymarks.
A teraz tieto verše, alebo tieto dva milníky prišli do toho celkového obrazu.
And we recognize that the king of the south suddenly is alive here in this history.
A rozpoznali sme, že kráľ juhu ešte stále nažive.
So I think when 2016 or the line about this line came out, that we started to say or to mention that the king of the south actually never died and was kind of under the scene still alive and just woke up here.
Takže keď v 2016 prišlo toto svetlo, tak sme potom to trošku začali inak formulovať, že je ako keby není priamo na scéne, ale znova prichádza k životu kráľovu.
That creates a problem.
A to spôsobuje určitý problém.
Because if the king of the south is alive through all this history,
pretože ak kráľ juhu žije počas všetkých týchto dejín
and only comes to its end here in this history,
a príde ku svojmu koncu až tu,
then what does verse 40b what is verse 40b about?
Tak čo potom znamená ten verš 40b?
Right? Can you see that problem?
Chápete ten problém?
Because suddenly it's not 1989 anymore,
Lebo zrazu už to nie je 89.
but then it's basically Pentium.
Ale je to Panium.
So 1989 is suddenly not really in the Bible anymore, or not really a waymark anymore.
Čiže ako keby to nejak tak podhodnotilo to pochopenie toho 89. Ako keby to zrazu tam nebolo v Biblii ten 89.
Or you could say it starts in 1989 and progressively ends in Pentium.
Alebo povieme, že začína v 89. a vyvrcholí to v Panium.
But we had in 1989, in this history, we had so many, if you just read the Time of the End magazine, it fits all on this verse, on this time period.
Ten 89. bol naozaj tak, ako keby do detailov rozobratý. Keď si prečítate ten časopis Čas konca, kde sa to vysvetľuje, každé jedno slovo vlastne spada na tú udalosť.
We would kind of destroy a little bit the sacredness of the waymark 1989 if we just place the perfect fulfillment at Pentium.
A by sme určitým spôsobom ako keby zničili tú svetosť toho milníka, keď by sme zrazu povedali, že sa to úplne naplní až pri tej bitke pri Panium.
So there was always a thought in the back of our minds, but we could not really solve it, or we didn't really see it through.
Toto ako sme mali v mysli, ale nevedeli sme to nejako vyriešiť.
But now with the same way we compare and contrast these two lines.
Týmto spôsobom, ako sme vlastne porovnali tie dve línie, dali ich ako keby do protikladu.
And you create waymarks that are not in the original text.
A prišli sme k dvom milníkom, ktoré neboli v tom pôvodnom texte.
If you just go to verse 40 and you do a compare and contrast in that verse,
keď pôjdeme len do verša 40 a urobíme vlastne toto porovnanie a zároveň toto vzájomné porovnanie a do kontrastu dáme ten 40. verš,
then you find something that is that we actually studied a little bit yesterday already.
Trošku sme o tom hovorili už včera.
What two personalities do we find in verse 40 of Daniel 11?
Aké sú dve entity alebo dve osobnosti, ktoré nachádzame v tom Danielovi 11.40? Alebo celkovo Danielovi 11. King of the North and South.
The King of the North and the King of the South. They are like put together in that verse. One comes to the other and the other comes to the other.
A v tomto verši sú daní dokopy, jeden ide na toho a potom ten na to prvého.
So we know in 1798 verse 40a.
1798, to je tá prvá časť toho verša, 40a.
We see that the King of the North, how do we call that? What happens to the King of the North in this
Čo sa to
1798?
stalo kráľovi Severa? Ako tomu hovoríme? A deadly wound.
A deadly wound, yeah. So he receives a deadly wound.
Dostal smrteľnú ranu.
Yeah, if we go to, so usually we say the papacy receives a deadly wound, which is so.
Väčšinou hovoríme, že pápežstvo dostal smrteľnú ranu a tak to je.
Now, if you go to the quote in 8 MR, you do have MR? Probably not, but it's a small quote. It's 8 MR 354.
Rukopisy, zväzok 8.
Oh, MR by the way. MR. And here,
354.
Sister White, it's a portion out of a letter she writes to someone.
Toto je list, ktorý niekomu píše.
And she writes that she was in France.
A píše, že bola vo Francúzsku.
And she was in a cathedral.
Katedrále.
Where there was a stone head, I don't know, the buste, and like a statue of Pius VI.
Aha. Like just the head.
Yeah, I think it's only the head.
Je tam nejaká taká socha hlavy alebo čo pápeža Pia VI.
And she says about this, she says, that afternoon he, some French brother, had us accompanied him to cathedral. So someone brought us to a cathedral in Valence. Someone in Valence.
Aha.
In France.
Takže oni išli proste s nejakým bratom do tej katedrály vo Valence.
And to look upon the bust of Pius VI, who was noted in prophecy.
Aby sme sa pozreli na tú hlavu toho pápeža, ktorý bol vlastne zaznamenaný v proroctve.
Who was led into captivity and died in captivity.
Bol zavedený do zajatia a zomrel v zajatí.
And now she says, here was the one marked in history who received the deadly wound.
On bol ten v dejinách, ktorý vlastne dostal tú smrteľnú ránu.
So, usually we say, the papacy receives a deadly wound.
My väčšinou hovoríme, že pápežstvo dostalo smrteľnú ranu.
And I think that's correct.
A myslím, že je to správne.
But here she applies it to the man himself, like to Pope Pius VI, that he received a deadly wound.
Ale tu na to priamo aplikuje na toho pápeža Pia VI, že on dostal tú smrteľnú ranu.
And then she says, we felt rather solemn as we looked upon the monument of this man noted in prophecy.
A cítili sme tú vážnosť, keď sme pozerali na sochu toho muža, ktorý je zaznamenaný v proroctve.
So, just look at this waymark. So we look at this waymark a little different when we read this quote.
Keď čítame tento citát, tak sa pozeráme trošku ináč na ten milník.
It's a deadly wound in regard to the papacy.
Je to smrteľná rana pápežstvu.
But you could say it is given to Pius VI.
Ale môžeme aj povedať, že vlastne pápežovi Piovi VI.
He is taken captive.
A on bol vzatý do zajatia.
He is wounded, the deadly wound.
On dostal smrteľnú ranu.
And we also see, the date is not given in this quote, but he was taken captive and he died in captivity.
A zomrel v tom zajatí.
We know that in 1799, a year later,
O rok neskôr
he dies.
zomrel.
We also see, if we study verse 4 of Daniel 11,
Keď študujeme 4. verš Daniela 11,
that the king of the north, or the papacy, or not the literal pope of course, but he in the end resurrects again. Not this book. Verse 40.
Aha, nie 4, ale 40. verš. Keď študujeme 40. verš, tak vieme, že on znova príde k životu, ten král severa.
So he dies, he goes in a coffin and he dies.
Zomrel.
But there comes a point, because the king of the north comes back to the king of the south, it says in verse 40.
Lebo v 40. verši vidíme, že ten král severa znova príde na kráľa juhu.
In verse 40 it says he returns.
Sa vlastne navráti proti nemu.
You could say, if you talk in the language of death and living, he dies, and the king of the north here resurrects.
Zomrie a znova ako keby príde k životu alebo je vzkriesený.
And you can see that this death is progressive. There is a wound and a death marked, and then a resurrection.
Vidíme, že je rana, potom smrť a potom vzkriesenie.
If we compare that, if we put the king of the north next to the king of the south, and we start to compare them with each other, and you bring them close to each other,
Keď kráľa juhu dáme do paralely s kráľom severa, vlastne ich ako keby porovnáme vzájomne.
and we look at 1989,
1989.
what happens to the king of the south? Who's the king of the south?
Kto je kráľ juhu? USSR.
The USSR. So, okay, so that was our original understanding. Later we started to say it's Russia.
To bolo naše pôvodné porozumenie, potom neskôr sme hovorili, že je to Rusko.
But I would like to suggest that it's the USSR.
Ja myslím, že je to Sovietský zväz.
So the USSR, in 1989, what's the USSR? What happened with the USSR?
Čo sa stalo s Ruskom v 89. Teda so Sovietským zväzom v 89.
Rozpadla sa.
Komunizmus sa rozpadol.
Rozpadla sa. Ale papež je ovládol.
She says the Pope took the control over them,
Kromě Ruska.
apart from Russia.
Yeah. So did that all happen in 1989?
Toto všetko sa stalo v 89.
91.
She says 91.
91. That's what we usually mark as the official fall of the USSR, right?
To je oficiálny pád Sovietskeho zväzu.
Yeah. But 1989 is significant as well.
Ale 89. je významný.
It's like the fall of the Berlin Wall, and from that point onward, you see that it progressively collapses.
Pád železnej opony, to bol vlastne ten prvý krok k tomu pádu.
So could we say that 1989 it receives a wound?
Môžeme povedať, že dostalo ranu v 89.
Obecně ateizmus.
Atheism. Atheism. Got the wound.
Yeah, it receives a wound, but it's not really dead yet.
Dostalo ranu, ale ešte to nie je úplne mŕtve.
And you can see that in 1991,
Ale vieme, že v 91.
that it's really dead. The USSR is fallen.
Sovietský zväz je už
Fall apart.
naozaj po ňom.
So you can see this progressive falling, just like you see here in this line. And you see in 1989, you see, sorry.
Je to postupný pád, tak jak to vidíme aj v tamtej línii.
So you can say that there is a wound
Takže je tu rana.
given. You could say to the USSR, you could say to, because we look to Pius here, who was the leader of USSR here?
Kto bol vlastne vedúci Sovietskeho zväzu?
Gorbačov.
Gorbachev. So you could say Gorbachev receives a deadly wound, or the USSR receives a wound, but it's not really fallen apart yet until 91 when it dies.
Sovietský zväz alebo aj Gorbačov dostali smrteľnú ranu, ale úplne nezomrel až
We know in
91.
We know in 1991, on the day that Gorbachev resigns his presidency, the USSR is officially fallen.
V 91. keď Gorbačov rezignoval zo svojej prezidentského kresla, tak vtedy vlastne sa rozpadol Sovietský zväz.
And therefore we can see that how we originally understood 1989, I think, is correct in the sense that verse 40b fulfills here in these verses, or in this history.
Originally understood 1989. Pôvodne, ako sme rozumeli 1989, to vidíme, že je to vlastne správne, že to naplňa ten verš úplne.
So that means the king of the south is not there anymore.
A vlastne ako keby už kráľ juhu nie je,
It's dead.
je mŕtvý.
But just as the king of the north
A tak ako aj kráľ severa,
comes back on the scene,
znova prichádza na scénu.
it's not in the verse,
Není to vo verši.
but if you compare and contrast these two lines,
A aj keď vlastne dávame do porovnania a protikladu tieto dve linie,
just as we did here,
tak ako aj tu,
we could expect a resurrection.
tak môžeme očakávať vzkriesenie.
And then it resurrects not as the USSR, but as Russia.
A je vzkriesené nie ako Sovietský zväz, ale ako Rusko.
As Russia. And in this way you can uphold Daniel 11 verse 40b in the original way.
Týmto spôsobom vlastne vieme podporiť Daniela 11.40b v tom jeho pôvodnom význame.
And you can add additional information based upon this line and upon this line.
A vieme ešte pridať ďalšie informácie na základe tej línie a tej línie.
But yeah, we can only create this if we compare and contrast these two entities, the king of the north and the king of the south, there in this one verse.
To môžeme vytvoriť len keď vlastne tieto dve časti medzi sebou porovnáme. Can I ask?
Mhm.
What was it? In verse 10, it was saying that before we read that it went into the fortress, and now it's up to the fortress. And
Yeah.
also we were using, I think, from Isaiah one verse where
Yeah,
it
good
says
point.
that the flood comes up the neck,
Yeah.
and so that's how I understood that.
Good point. I forgot about that. Yeah. We had a good reason, or we had kind of proof text to show that Russia was still alive. That's how we, after the introduction of these lines.
Potom, ako sme vlastne priniesli tieto linie, tak sme videli, že Rusko je ešte stále naživé.
Because we went to Isaiah 8 verse 8, I think,
Izaiášovi 8:8
and Isaiah 7 to show that there the king of the north, in regard to Judah,
a tu vlastne král severa, Judah was king of the north.
no, Assyria is the king of the north, and he passes over, or he flows over Judah.
Čiže Asýria prichádza ako král severa na Júdu.
And you can see, if you in Isaiah 8:8, you can see that similar language is used as in verse 40. It says that the king of the north, or he, Assyria, shall pass through Judah. He shall overflow and go over. He shall reach even to the neck. And the stretching out of his wings shall fill the breadth of thy land, O Emmanuel.
Takže tu vidíme vo 8. verši podobný jazyk, ako sme už čítali aj v tom 40. A dovaliať sa do Judska zaplaví a prejde, dosiahne až po hrdlo a bude mať roztiahnuté svoje krídla na celú šír tvojej zeme, o Emmanuel. Čiže zaplaví a prejde a dosiahne po hrdlo.
And we use this verse to show that this overflowing and this passing through of the king of the north, reaching unto the neck, means that it takes almost everything except the head.
A tu sme videli, že vlastne ten král severa zaplaví a prejde a zoberie všetko okrem hlavy. Tá hlava ostane.
Based upon also Isaiah 7 verse 8, where it says that the head of, it gives some examples of what the head means. The head of Syria is Damascus, and the head of Samaria, no, the head of Ephraim is Samaria.
A nám vlastne to Izaiášovi 7 v 8. kapitole vysvetľuje, že čo to vlastne je tá hlava.
So you have a country.
I still have to read the verse.
Oh.
Lebo hlavou Sýrie je Damašek a hlavou Damašku je Recín. A ešte 65 rokov a Efraim bude rozdrtený, takže prestane byť ľudom.
So you have a country.
Takže máme krajinu.
And it has a capital
A
city.
má to svoje hlavné mesto.
And here in Isaiah 7, this is called the head.
A v Izaiášovi 8 toto je nazvaná tá hlava.
It is the place where the king reigns. This is his territory where he lives, but this belongs to him as well.
A je to miesto, z ktorého vlastne ten kráľ vládne. Toto je jeho miesto, z ktorého vládne, ale patrí mu celé to teritorium.
And we said, if we applied this to this history,
A keď to aplikujeme na tieto dejiny,
that's what we said before,
to sme predtým hovorili,
that if this is the Soviet Republic
ak toto je sovietský zväz
with their satellite states
so všetkými satelitnými štátmi
and Russia as the head,
a Rusko je tá hlava,
that all the satellite states were taken in 1991 and the king of the south was reached to his fortress,
že všetky tie satelitné štáty vlastne boli vzaté v 89. a král severa vstúpil až k tej pevnosti, ale nevošiel do pevnosti.
except Russia.
Zobral všetko okrem Ruska.
So Russia was still standing, and that's why we said Russia is still alive. The king of the south is still alive all the way through.
Čiže Rusko stále ešte stojí a teda kráľ juhu ako keby nebol úplne vzatý.
But that created this problem that we started with this morning.
A to vlastne spôsobilo ten problém, s ktorým sme začali teraz ráno.
That what are you doing with 1989 then if these verses so perfectly fit on 1989 if it is the USSR, if you have to place it in the future.
A to vlastne spôsobilo ten problém, o ktorom sme začali hovoriť ráno, že čo potom spravíme s celým tým veršom 40, ktorý vlastne ako keby sa dokonale naplňa v tom 89. A teraz by sme to mali posunúť, že Rusko padne až o polnoci, alebo napadne, že to dáme do budúcnosti.
Can we see that?
Vidíte to?
So, to kind of, if we go back to Isaiah 8 and you read verse 8 about Assyria coming to Judah and he overflows.
Takže keď ideme do Izaiáša 8.8 a tam čítame, ako prišla Asýria na Júdu a zaplaví a prejde.
Or this reaching unto the neck.
Že vlastne príde až po ten krk.
Or you look into your Bible in other places where it is referred to standing with your foot on the neck.
Alebo keď sa pozriete na iné miesta v Biblii, kde sa píše, že s nohou sa postaví na krk.
Or reaching unto the neck.
Alebo príde až po krk.
It refers to a complete victory. If you reach someone to the neck, you got him completely.
Ono to hovorí o úplnom víťazstve. Keď niekoho chytíte za krk, máte nad ním víťazstvo.
If you just read verse 8, we just read it.
V tom 8. verši, čo sme čítali.
It says, he shall reach even unto the neck, and the stretching out of his wings shall fill the breadth of thy land, O Emmanuel. So it says, it will cover your whole country.
Dosiahne až po hrdlo a bude mať roztiahnuté svoje krídla na celú šír tvojej zeme. To znamená, že celej zeme sa zmocní.
It shall pass through. Even passing through means if you have a country and this king of the north comes, he just comes in, he overflows everything, so he to all corners of the country, and he passes through and he continues his battle to another country as well.
Keď máme krajinu a príde nepriateľ a zaplaví a prejde, to znamená, že zaplaví všetko v tej krajine a ide ďalej.
This verse basically says in some nice words, it says, it will take over your whole country.
To je len peknými slovami povedané, že sa to zmocní celej krajiny.
Or no.
I have a question. Because then how does it fit with the verse 10? Because first we were comparing verse 10 with 40.
Mm-hmm.
And verse 10 shows that it went up to the fortress, and in the history of it didn't enter the country, in the battle. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. If you go to this history literally, just to explain what it was about, if this is not bad drawing. If this is the Mediterranean Sea,
Toto keď je Stredozemné more,
then this is Egypt,
to je Egypt,
and here you have the king of the north in Seleucus.
tu je kráľ Severa, Seleukus,
He has this area here.
má tam tú oblasť.
And basically from the beginning onward, and that's an interesting study, if you go back to if you go back to the beginning,
Ak pôjdeme úplne na začiatok,
the Battle of Ipsus,
tá bitka pri Ipse,
the Battle of Ipsus is the birth of the controversy between the king of the north and the king of the south.
to je vlastne zrodenie toho sporu medzi kráľom juhu a severa.
As we said, in this history here, General Seleucus was a general of the king of the south in the beginning.
Ako sme hovorili v týchto dejinách, tak vlastne ten Seleukus bol generál kráľa juhu pôvodne.
But he became so strong that he became stronger than his boss.
Ale stal sa taký silný, že bol vlastne silnejší ako jeho pán.
He was actually, his order was to conquer something for his boss, but now he took it himself.
On dostal vlastne príkaz získať určitú krajinu pre svojho pána, ale on si ju zobral sám.
The order was to take Syria or / Babylon, that area.
Mal zobrať
Here.
Sýriu, Babylon,
To take that and for him.
pre Egypt.
But Seleucus took it for himself.
Ale Seleukus si to vzal pre seba.
and conquered the rest here in Greece as well.
A potom porazil aj zbytok tam.
But Seleucus, he had basically a debt towards him.
A Seleukus mal ako keby taký dlh voči Egyptu.
Since the beginning.
Už od začiatku.
And then the Battle of Ipsus, which we talked about yesterday,
Bitka pri Ipsus, o ktorej sme hovorili včera,
where we have these three entities. We have Seleucus, Lysimachus, and Cassander.
kde máme tieto three allies? Were they allies?
Three allies.
Týchto troch spojencov, to je Cassander, Lysimachus a Seleukus.
And they fought against Antigonus.
Bojovali proti Antigonovi.
But Ptolemy was supposed to be among this group as well.
Ptolemaj
They
tam
were all allies, kind of.
mal tam byť tiež.
And they all wanted to get rid of this Antigonus.
A chceli sa zbaviť toho Antigona.
But Ptolemy, he was on his way till the Battle of Ipsus. I think it took place somewhere here.
A bitka pri Ipse to bolo niekde tuto,
Not sure, somewhere here.
približne.
So Ptolemy, he was on his way to. No, I think it was. But doesn't matter. He was on his way, and halfway he heard a rumor that they lost the battle.
A Ptolemaj vlastne išiel smerom k ním do tej bitky, ale počul nejaké také správy, že oni prehrali.
So he just returned and he said, okay, I'm not going further.
A tak sa vrátil, že on tam nejde za nimi.
So he didn't show up at this battle. This rumor was false. The battle did not even start yet.
To boli nejaké falošné správy, lebo tá bitka ešte ani sa neodohrala.
But they won the battle.
Oni to vyhrali.
And Ptolemy never showed up.
A Ptolemaj nikdy neprišiel.
But on his way back or on his return,
Na jeho ceste naspäť.
he took this part from Seleucus. This you call in history it's called Kole in English. I'm not sure how. Kole, Syria.
A zobral vlastne túto časť cestou naspäť, ak sa vracal, tak sa zmocnil tejto oblasti.
The debt that Seleucus still had to pay to Ptolemy.
A to si ako on zobral ten dlh, ktorý mu dlžil ten Seleukus.
He took it, and Ptolemy heard about it, and he didn't do anything. He accepted it. Seleucus.
Seleukus,
He heard about it and he accepted it.
Seleukus o tom počul a on to ako prijal, vôbec to nejak neriešil.
He didn't start to fight back, to conquer it back or something.
Nezačal nejako proti nemu naspäť bojovať.
But that fight, when this Seleucus died, his son
Ale
became king or general.
keď zomrel Seleukus, tak jeho syn sa stal kráľom.
And he was the first one who started to battle about this area, to conquer it back.
On začal vlastne bojovať ohľadne tej oblasti.
And it is this area where this battle of the king of the north and the king of the south is about in all these verses.
A vlastne oni bojovali spolu o je to táto oblasť, o ktorú oni celú tú kapitolu spolu bojujú.
And why did I get here?
Because I was asking you about the verse 10, which says that he got up to the fortress. And so when I first heard this study, it showed it didn't enter their country.
Yeah. And that's exactly what it is. The king. So verse 10 is when the king of the north. That's in the story I just said. The son of the first Seleucus.
Čiže ten král severa je už syn toho Seleuka prvého.
He took Syria back.
A on si zobral tú Sýriu naspäť.
And he was never interested in Egypt. He just wanted
Jeho
this neutral.
Egypt nezaujímal, on len chcel len tú oblasť.
So it's not that the king of the north wanted to take down the complete king of the south here. He just wanted to have this area back.
On nikdy nechcel ani poraziť kráľa juhu, on chcel iba tú oblasť.
That's why it says he to his fortress.
Preto sa tam píše, že po jeho pevnosť.
He took this. So the battle was always about some neutral ground. It's not the territory that originally didn't belong to them.
Tá bitka bola vždy o nejaké také iné územie, nie o to ich vlastné územie.
The king of the north,
Ale tuto král severa
was definitely interested in the fall of Russia and the whole USSR.
Určite chcel pád celého Ruska, celého Sovietskeho zväzu. That was my original question, because then it doesn't fall in the line, you know, like, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I agree. We use that to his fortress and into his fortress as an argument to show that 1989 is that it's still alive, Russia. Yeah, there are now reasons to say that, to doubt that, or to say that it maybe not is the case. And then this argument is not valid anymore. We cannot uphold that argument anymore. So I can see your...
So what should I translate?
First your question and then an answer. I can answer it again.
Ja som sa ho pýtala vlastne, lebo on teraz hovorí, že ten 89., že to bol sovietský zväz a teraz sa vracia naspäť ako Rusko. A ja som vlastne hovorila, že ja som tomu tak rozumela na základe toho porovnávania s tým 10. veršom. Predtým sme čítali, že vošiel až do jeho pevnosti, ale toto prišiel iba po tú pevnosť a že vlastne v dejinách to tak bolo, že fyzicky nevošli vlastne do tej krajiny samotnej, ale iba akože zastavili sa na tom cudzom území ako keby, hej. A že potom to ale nejde úplne do línie s tým 89. To, čo on teraz hovorí. Ako keď berieme tento argument, že ten 89. Vlastne sa to presne tak stalo, jak aj v tom 10. verši, že prišli iba po tú krajinu, tak to akože je v paralele, ale on hovorí, že neviem, či ma chápete, čo myslím.
You also translated my answer?
No, I'm trying to explain my question, I'm not sure if I'm explaining it.
Já tomu rozumím, mně se zdá, že to je stejné.
She says she doesn't think it contradicts. What I'm saying about the verse 10 and 40, that it should be in one line, she says it doesn't contradict.
Why don't you think it's why does it not contradict?
A prečo myslíš, v čom to je?
Protože do toho Egypta nestoupil, tak jako se nepodařilo papežství ovlivnit Rusko.
That because they didn't enter Egypt, and also they didn't enter Russia. So she thinks it's in line with like 10 and 40 is in line.
Yeah.
Len to je potom v protiklade s tým, čo on hovorí. I say it contradicts what you're saying now.
Yeah, because it kind of contradicts. I understand her question.
Ja chápem, čo sa Monika pýta.
Because what I say here
Lebo čo ja hovorím tu
is that the king of the south is really defeated. It's really gone.
Lebo čo ja hovorím tu je to, že vlastne ten kráľ juhu je naozaj porazený a ako keby zomrel.
And that it is really buried and somehow resurrects again.
A potom príde znova k životu.
And this explanation
Toto vysvetlenie
says that the king of the south was always there until now, from 1989 until
hovorí,
today.
že ten kráľ juhu tam vždycky bol od 89. až do teraz.
But when we explained that with this explanation I just did, we didn't see the effect or the result of that yet.
Keď sme to vysvetľovali pomocou tohto, ešte sme nevideli toho plný účinok.
Because then you create a problem with verse 40b in 1989.
Lebo tam potom vznikne ten problém, že ako keby troška znehodnotíme 89.
So if this is okay, that would mean that verse 10 is still a king of the north comes to the king of the south. The king of the north defeats the king of the south, which happens here and which happens here, and there are elements different.
Ale stále je tam rovnaká paralela, že kráľ severa porazí kráľa juhu. But I don't think in the Bible it says that the papacy died, because to get wounded is not the same as to die. We can discuss it afterwards.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
okay.
No, but I mean that's a good.
Because in Revelation it says that the deadly wound got healed, not that it was resurrected.
Mm-hmm. Verse 3. And I saw one's head, and it was wounded to death. And his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wanted after the beast. Wounded to death.
Which verse is it?
Verse 3, 13:3.
Yeah, here it says wounded as to death in Slovak. What does it say in English? Wounded to death.
Wounded to death.
Mhm.
13, koľko? 13?
13.3, zjavenie 13.3.
What is in my margin? It says slain.
Aj tu je, že doťatú na smrť v rohačku.
Ako doťatu na smrť, nie? Ako doťatu.
Aha, ako je doťatú na smrť.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's the wounded. To butcher an animal for food. To slaughter,
Mhm.
to maim, kill, slay, wound.
To slovo, čo je ako...
So that's what Strong says about this word.
Je vypadalo.
Takže môže to byť akože dice.
Mhm. To slovo doťatu znamená vlastne v tom origináli, keď si pozeral, tak tam píše, že zabité. Akože, ako keď zabiješ zviera, ktoré ideš jesť alebo čo.
Protože my tu máme tak jako vypadala.
Mhm, aj nám to tak. They also says that it only looked that she's dead.
Only appeared to be dead, but it was
Zbyta,
not.
že byla zbyta, nezabita.
Mhm.
Je něco jiného je, když to dosáhne k trupu, a když David to bojoval s Goliášem, on mu sekl hlavu. Tam byla dána úplně smrtelná rana. Dokud není ta hlava oddělena. A ten trup, když je trup a hlava je zdravá, tak ta hlava řídí to tělo. A ono se to tělo může uzdravit.
He says, like when David killed Goliath, he had to cut off his head. But if the head stays connected with the body can get healed because the head rules the body.
The head stays connected with the body. It can. Yeah. But if you chop off the head, and you only have the head and the body is gone, because that's what we said here. We only have the head now. Doesn't really.
Ak máš len
Live.
hlavu, tak to tiež tá hlava sama o sebe neprežije.
Only the head of Goliath you can already live anymore. And that's why I put this line here, not of the papacy, but of Pius.
Ja som sem dal vlastne, ja som tu ukázal Pia, nie pápežstvo, ale Pia.
Because Pius VI, he was wounded,
Pius naozaj bol
he was taken
zranený
captive, and he died.
a zomrel.
And we made that a parallel with Gorbachev. He was wounded, and he died.
A dali sme to do paralely s Gorbačom, lebo on dostal vlastne politickú ranu a zomrel politicky.
And that was gone. And then I could say, instead of Russia, I could say Putin here.
Možno miesto Ruska môžem sem dať Putina.
Because Putin is still he has the USSR spirit in his heart.
On má stále vo svojom srdci ešte ducha z Sovietskeho zväzu.
And so you could perhaps say, instead of Russia, I mean it's Russia, but Putin, if you put a person, and then you should here have a person.
Keď sem dávame ako ľudí, tak by som tam dal Putina, ale on riadi Rusko.
And then this is John Paul II.
A tu je Jan Pavel II.
The resurrection of Pope Pius.
Skriesenie vlastne pápežstva.
To Well, yeah. Okay. How far am I? Are we?
45.
I think I would like kind of like finish this thought or topic. So if there are, I'm thinking if I can add, I don't really have something to add, I think.
Toto téma by som chcel skončiť, neviem, či k tomu ešte niečo máte.
Questions or comments?
Máme nejaké komenty?
I can see the doubt still. I'm not sure if I can completely take them away because it's kind of like changing a little bit interpretation.
Vidím, že sú tu určité také nezrovnalosti, ale nie som si istý, že ich zatiaľ viem vyriešiť.
But there is. Why would we like to have the King of the South not dying in this history? What is the problem if we say it is dead? What kind of a problem does that create for you?
V čom by bol problém, keby sme povedali, že ten kráľ už zomrel a príde naspäť k životu? My problem is it's not consistent because here we say it's USSR and here we say it's Russia. You know, like
Yeah, it resurrects a little different. But, I mean, the papacy here is not the papacy there. You could say this is Papal Rome, this is modern Rome.
ja hovorím, že mne to tam napríklad nesedí, že tam zomrie Sovietsky zväz a povstane Rusko, že mi to príde také nekonzistentné. On hovorí, že ale tiež aj to pápežstvo, ktoré vlastne dostalo smrteľnú ránu, sa navracia už v inej forme. Nie v také, aké bolo. That's true.
So yeah, that's my thought. And the interesting thing is that the war between the United States and Russia that takes place at the moment, or yeah, it's kind of finished now recently, but or it takes place in this history in this region as well. Syria.
Je zaujímavé, že práve ten boj, ktorý sa odohrával medzi Ruskom a Amerikou, sa práve odohráva v tejto oblasti, Syria.
Different. I mean, it's not about this area. It's not that this. It's not about this area as it was in the time period of Egypt and the King of the North.
Nie je to presne to, ako v čase Egypta a Sýrie.
Because this was a very strategic place of geography.
To bolo veľmi strategické miesto geografické.
It's not that they want to have this country or something.
To nejde o to, že oni potrebujú tú krajinu.
But there are reasons for money, so to speak, to have some sort of control over this.
Ale sú tam určité peňažné dôvody, prečo chcú mať vládu nad tou oblasťou.
It seems to have that it all has to do with a gas pipeline.
Pravdepodobne ropa.
Because here you have I'm not sure if I draw this. I think this is the Gulf of Persia.
Myslím, že to je Perský záliv.
Which is Qatar is here.
Tu je Katar.
And here is Iran.
Irán.
And they both have gas. This is a super big gas field.
A to je veľmi silné ropné pole.
And they both have plans to build a pipeline to Europe because Europe needs gas.
Russia and America.
Iran and Qatar.
Aha, obidvaja títo, aj Irán, aj Katar majú vlastne plány vystavať akože ropovody do Európy.
But Iran is supported by Russia.
Írsko je podporované Ruskom,
and Qatar by the United
teda
States.
Irán, a Katar je Spojenými štátmi.
And Qatar wants to build their pipeline all the way to Europe. But you need Syria for that.
A na to vlastne potrebujú tú Sýriu.
And Syria said, no, we don't want your pipeline.
A Syria povedala, my nechceme ropovod od Kataru.
Iran want the pipeline, and then so through the sea up to Europe.
A Irán chce ísť taďalto.
And Iran was, and Syria was fine with that one.
A Syria s tým súhlasí.
So there is a story of gas in Syria as well. So there, it has to do with. It's a strategic area still.
To je
Actually, now I think
proste,
about it.
naďalej je to stále dobré strategické územie.
In 2,000 years ago, it was strategic because of their trade routes, because this is like this narrow path between Europe and Asia and Africa.
Vlastne pred 2000 rokmi to bola ako keby taká križovatka obchodných ciest.
That's why God also placed Palestine here, the God Israel here in this area.
Boh tu umiestnil Palestínu.
Like all the people from Africa to Europe, and from Europe to Africa, and from Europe to Asia, they needed to go through this area. So this is the center of the world, basically, of the trade routes.
Akokoľvek sa ľudia presúvali, či do Európy, do Afriky alebo do Ázie, stále sa chodilo tade.
So as a king, you would like to have access or rulership over this area.
Čiže kráľ vždycky chcel mať prístup k tej oblasti.
That's over now.
To už je za nami.
But still, there is this thing about a gas pipeline
Ale
that makes this geography, this place in geography important.
teraz je to zasa tá ropa, ktorá robí tú oblasť zaujímavou, dôležitou.
But now Trump said, "I'm out of here. I'm not going to be in Syria anymore."
A Trump sa zrazu stiahol, povedal, ja sa stiahujem do Syrie.
Surprising everybody, the whole world. He surprises the whole world.
Všetkých to veľmi prekvapilo.
And basically he says to Putin or to Russia, you can have it.
A povedal ako keby Putinovi, môžete si to zobrať.
That's what we marked as an Heraklia.
A to sme my vlastne zaznačili ako na Herakleu. So, which year is that?
Last year,
To
2018.
je vlastne 2018.
Okay. Maybe we leave it here and then we continue after.
Budeme pokračovať neskôr.
Shall we pray?
Poďme sa pomodliť.
Dear Heavenly Father,
Drahý nebeský Otče,
thank you for another hour of study.
ďakujeme Ti za ďalšiu možnosť štúdia.
Help us to get a better understanding of these verses, of these histories.
Pomôž, aby sme lepšie rozumeli týmto dejinám.
And forgive me of my lack of explaining well if I have created some more questions than answering them.
Prosím, odpusti mi, ak som to nevedel dobre vysvetliť, že som spôsobil viac otázok ako odpovedí.
Lord, we're all students of prophecy and we would like to understand your word better
My sme všetci len študenti proroctva a chceli by sme rozumieť tomu slovu lepšie
and the time we're living in.
a času, v ktorom žijeme.
Help us to be blessed through the rest of the day as well if we continue when we continue our studies today.
Prosím, požehnaj nám zbytok tohto dňa, ešte keď budeme pokračovať.
Be with us throughout the rest of the day with your angels and pour out your latter rain upon us.
A zostan s nami, so svojimi anielmi a vylej na nás svoj neskorý dážď.
In Jesus' name we ask.
Mene Ježiša te prosíme.
Amen.
Amen.